was drafted in the fall of 1940, I believe it was, or 41, I'm sorry. My military training actually started back in early, or rather late 1940, and I attended the military academy at St. Joseph's out there, and I graduated from there in 1943. From there I was sent to Fort Leavenworth, where I stationed for about 3 weeks, I think. That was the reception center where they called us. And from there, after having a short leave to go home, I was sent up to Fort Lawton right near Seattle, Washington. And we was there for about 6 weeks, I believe, for our basic training. And after a short leave home, I was sent by a train clear across the country. I think we had 5 days traveling, and at the end of that trip we landed at Fort Camp Kilmer in New Jersey, right outside of Newark, New Jersey. And after staying there for probably 2 weeks, I think, something like that, then they shipped us from New York to Glasgow, Scotland, and we went by way of Greenland and Iceland, followed the coast kind of, and we ended up in the port at Glasgow, Scotland. And along the way, some of the more interesting things was the fact that we had probably 100 ships lined up in a row, and due to the fact that there was always submarines out there, the ships would go straight in the lines, and pretty soon about 5 minutes later they changed their direction so that the submarines had to re-aim. So that kind of entertained us a little bit. Anyway, we got to Scotland, and from there we were put on a train and sent to Bristol, England, where they were building ships, and we didn't help with the shipbuilding. It was just a place for us to spend some time while we were waiting for the invasion of Europe. So when we were finally ready for that, they put us on an English ship, and that was my first experience in a hammock, which I didn't particularly like, but I think that took 2 days to cross the channel there. And from there we went inland about 2 or 3 miles, I guess, late in the afternoon. And all of this was after we left our ship early in the morning, and in order to get to land we had to be hauled in with a little small landing craft, because they were out about 2 miles. The water was real shallow, and so the ships couldn't get in very far. And from there we marched in a few miles, and it was almost dark by that time, and they asked us to, and didn't ask us, told us to sit down and relax for a little while, and then we'd go on in. And from there on in, the commands were all given by whispering. It was getting dark by then, and didn't want anybody to hear us. So we did sit down, and all of us either fell asleep or did other things. And at that point I answered nature's call. Later it got dark on us, and by the time I got back, they had all picked up, worked off. Then the next morning we got up, I guess, sun probably woke us, but we no more than got dressed, and we're getting out for formation to check ahead, see how many of us were there. And just about the time we got out in this middle of the field, it was in what we call the hedgerows, and a bunch of trees kind of sealed it off. And we didn't see them coming at all, but pretty soon we heard the crackling of machine on fire. So anyway, from there we looked up, and all I saw was 2 airplanes, and I don't know who was chasing who, or didn't know whether they were ours or theirs. And so at this point we did, as they flew over us, we all got pretty well sacked out. We headed for the nearest trees, and luckily the Germans had left some foxholes there for us, so that's where we went. That we headed for Paris, because that was a big target for our side. And I think we got into Paris probably in August sometime. And from there we spent probably a couple of nights, and we were assigned a place to sleep for a while, and then they called me up to assign me a jeep and a guard. He was a private, I was a sergeant at the time. And we were assigned a route in Belgium that we were couriers, they called them, nothing more than a messenger. And we were assigned a place in a small town in Belgium. And from there we drove up to Liège, Belgium, which was pretty close to German line up there. And of course our troops, a lot of them were still here and some up there. So my job was to haul messages back and forth. And I did that, I think, for probably a couple of 3 months. And by that time the Battle of the Bulge had started, and they were in Germany quite a ways yet. And that route where I followed that river was just right about there. But I was sent back to Paris, France by that time again, because my services were no longer needed. By then we had wires strung all over the place and had communications. But anyway, I got back to Paris, and we didn't have nothing more for me to do except to type. I know how to type, so I ran a teletype for about, oh gosh, probably almost a year. They shipped me in, of course a lot of others, up to into Normandy again. And what we did there, we were guards over our German prisoners, and they also had, sometimes these guys were our cooks and whatever, but we had them enclosed in a big fence, and I walked guard duty over them a lot of times and fed them and different things. And when that was finally finished, we had to wait for our ships to get there, because they were being used for so many other things and hauling thousands of other troops home at that time and bringing back some of the German prisoners, I guess. However, I didn't ever see that, but I'm sure that's what they were using for. And back into Camp Kilmer again for just a few hours. And from there they sent us back on a train back to Fort Leavenworth, not Fort Leavenworth, Fort Riley. And I don't think we were there probably one day at the most. And from there they put us on a train and shipped us home again. And we were, let's see, I think we must have been home for probably a week maybe. And then they sent me back to Leavenworth again, where I was finally discharged. After I was home for, I think, 2 or 3 years, I then ended up in the inactive reserves. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but we were given the choice to either sign up on the inactive reserves or be in reserve at the draft board. So they promised us that if we signed up, we kept our rank, which was a sergeant at that time, and we wouldn't be called until the active reserve was called. Well, as it turned out, I lost 1 rank, and the tour of duty was just about out. My brothers are the same way. We both had to sign up, I think, for 2 years at the time, or maybe it was 4, I can't remember. But anyhow, it turns out that he and I were called and sent over, I think, almost 3 or 4 months before they were called up. And they had been getting training right along. They got money, and they increased in rank. And they went over as a group, you know, where they helped each other. And Jerry and I both went over as individuals. And there's a lot of funny things going over there. We landed in Tokyo Harbor, and the wives of the airmen that were there, they did all they could to make us feel accommodated. And from there, we did a little training at Mount Fuji, which was right west of Busan, or no, of Tokyo. And let's see, from there we came back and got on a ship again and sailed around the bottom part of Tokyo, or Japan. And I think we spent 2 days on that ship. And of course we were so loaded that there were 3 guys assigned to each bed. And they had iron thoria. So almost all of them had it. And we had our luggage with us, so that was put in the beds and we slept on the floor. So anyway, from there we sailed around the southern part of Japan and landed at Incheon. And I think we were supposed to go to Seoul. Yeah, it was Seoul that they were trying to send us to. And by the time they got us there, where the North Koreans had almost taken in, you know. So anyway, we never got there. We had to grab a train and head south. And I think we probably got down there that same day, which was probably a couple 100 miles, I guess. And the comical thing about that whole trip was that that we were sleeping on wooden beds in there. Of course, we didn't sleep, we weren't supposed to. And I hate to tell you this, but anyway, it was during the winter time, and a lot of guys would use the back of the train for their outhouse, and it froze. And later in the day, we were all settled down inside, and this one guy evidently went outside and fell off the train. Nobody knew it. And I think it must have been toward evening when we finally missed him, and of course he was way back by then. And we stopped somewhere along the line and had to either a bad wheel or something, but anyway, he actually caught up with us. That's how slow we moved. And when he got there, of course, everybody, where the heck were you, you know? And then he had to tell us his story. And I think he ended up breaking a leg or an ankle or something. He fell off onto the rail, you know. That was one of the more comical things. And there was usually two men to that. And at first, my brother Jerry and I were together on most of those trips. And then later on the way back, we had not eaten all day. I guess we failed to take supplies along or couldn't get in or something. So anyway, we each ate an apple. And by the time we checked in, it was almost dark. And of course, we were in the town of Tegu, and we had never been there before either. But somehow we found where we were supposed to report, and we did that. And while I was giving my report, Brother Jerry was standing right here, and pretty soon he just got stiff as a board, and he fell straight over. And we, of course, had to call an ambulance in. They came and got him, put him in the hospital that night, and I went out with him and got him settled in, and then got back on a train and headed south, so I had to go back to work the next day. And it was a couple of days before I got back to him again. And when I did, it was that same evening, he was laying in bed here. There was a soldier, I think he was a Korean probably, was laying there anyway. And he woke up and saw this guy who had a bullet in his foot. And he was scared to death. He thought he got hit. And I forget, probably 10 or 11 before all this happened. So he woke up, my goodness, he said, "Where did I get hit?" I told him, I said, "No, you didn't get hit," so that made him feel a lot better. So anyway, the next day or two when I got back, I was able to pick him up and take him along with me. And of course we had a hitchhike in those days. And if we would catch a truck or a Jeep, not a Jeep, because they usually had too many guys in there already. But anyway, they hauled us back to Busan, which is way on the south end of the country. And from there, I think he must have been pretty well by then already. Anyway, they gave us our instructions in a sheet of paper like this to tell us where we were supposed to stop. And we didn't actually unload the train. What we did is that a certain car was loaded with certain things. We had instructions to load that car and leave it in that town, you know. When we first got to Korea, to the Busan, we had to set up our own tents. There was nothing set up. And everything was there. Tents were there and the stoves were there, laying all over the place. So each of us had to help put things together. And our potties, of course, were outside. And had a few times when it snowed a little bit, so that wasn't too pleasant. I think one time we went up empty, which is usually backwards. And we got on the East Coast and there was a train already loaded. The guys were on it and everything. Had a bunch of tanks and artillery. And in fact, I think I was up by myself that time, and I took that train, got in, checked it out, and went in probably halfway into the Korea Peninsula there, and dumped off the whole train. And what they did with it after that, I don't know, but that was our job there. This happened. We had an awful lot of air activity in those days, and I saw one of our planes come down. It was a fighter plane, and he landed, and his front wheel collapsed on him, so he went scooting down the cement, sparks flying all over. But he lived to tell about it. And then from there they had a regular airplane with no anemones with it anyway. And they put us on that and hauled us over to Tokyo. Got us unloaded, and I think we spent probably half a day there. And from there we loaded up again, and we flew to let's see, I think it was Wake Island where we landed that time, the first time. And from there we flew on to Honolulu, and we spent about an hour or so, and we had a meal there, and then got on the plane, and from there we flew out to air base near San Francisco. I can't think of the name of it anymore, airfield. And at that point they put us on the train, and we, let's see, we went to, I think, right up to Frisco, to Denver, went around Denver and got the train clear back to here. And that was right after the 51 flood, if you remember, that almost washed all the tracks out. And we got over to Yosemite, and they were hanging over the edge, so they wouldn't let us use that one. They sent us on another route, clear up north, and went to probably Plainville East, and then came down. That was the way we were in our route. And from there, they wouldn't discharge us. They were too smart for that, so they sent us to Fort Riley, and a lot of the base had been washed away or destroyed, so they put us to work tearing the buildings down and hauling the lumber away, you know, to the dump. But they wouldn't let us go home, and I think we were there another 2 weeks or so, and of course I kept pestering them each weekend, telling them I wanted to go home. Had nothing to do for us, so they finally did send us. But instead of sending us home, in their wisdom, they sent me back to Camp Carson again. So I think Jerry and I were there at least a month, I think. And finally we didn't have anything to do. We actually played pool and stuff out there just to get something to do. And a lot of guys would ask us, we were in a hospital, of course, working out there supposedly. And they'd ask you, well, what are you guys supposed to be doing out here? We don't know.